Waratahs prop Tom Robertson joining us. Tom, thanks for coming in to Kick and Chase for the first time, I think. Is it tough to stay upbeat because, you know, there wasn't a great first half on the weekend?
Yeah, definitely. It's pretty tough to stay upbeat, but I guess it's all on ourselves. You know, we can't, you know, blame it on anyone else. It's all on the players, and, you know, I think that's a good thing because we have it in our power to fix it, and we've got the cattle at the Waratahs to fix it, and I think we will come in the coming season.
Tom, did you feel like when the pressure's on and or maybe when the pressure's off, like you're down by 26 points, the boys come on and just start playing football and they start playing, you know, instinctive footy, and that seems to be working? Is there something that's too strict on you early in the game?
No, I don't think so. I just think, you know, we're putting a lot of pressure on ourselves, maybe a bit too much, and, you know, we're second-guessing ourselves and not doing what we should do instinctively. And, you know, our coaches have given us the licence to play instinctively. You know, Daryl's a Kiwi, he loves playing sort of a free-style of rugby, so I think we just need to do that more. And, you know, you see guys like Will Skelton came on, had 18 carries in the second half. That's just playing instinctively, and I think if more people go like him, you know, I think we're in good stead.
Yeah, Nick Phipps as well made a big impact in the second half. Interesting to hear the Blues coach, All Black great Tana Umaga, his take on why Australian teams are struggling at the moment. This was straight after that game on Saturday night.
Yeah, we realise and we all know that you know, there's been some tough things going on over here, and not just on the field, obviously off the field. So that's, you know, it's unsettling. You know, we're taking advantage of that, obviously. Again, you know, look, once they sort that out, then I'm sure you know, Australian rugby will be back on track.
Well, let's hope so. The numbers, they speak for themselves. 23 straight losses to New Zealand sides, including all 17 so far this season. Over that stretch, a points differential of 489 and 47 tries compared to 143. And the record in New Zealand, 29 straight losses, points differential 634 and 57 tries compared with 155. Those numbers are very real. The players say they don't really worry about that, you just worry about the next game. But does that start to resonate? A lot of people talking about it, including us, obviously.
Yeah, I guess it does, but from sort of the Waratahs perspective, we sort of see it as Waratahs versus the team that we're playing that week. We don't see it as, you know, the 5 Aussie franchises, you know, how bad they are and, you know, how bad they're going. We see it as the Waratahs aren't playing to their potential, you know. Although we might have Wallaby commitments later on in the year, we don't really, you know, take too much interest in what the other Aussie franchises are doing. We take interest in what we're doing and how we can improve, and I think there's obviously a lot of growth in there because we can play some great rugby when we want to. So, you know, I think it's just looking at ourselves mostly. As we saw in the second half on Saturday night. Kersey, a lot of talk this week about a summit, and one about an all-encompassing summit, all the stakeholders together and trying to find solutions to the problems at the moment. Another one later in the week talking about a coaching summit. Do you believe that sort of talk fest, that gab fest, might work?
Well, not particularly. I think there are a number of different issues in the games, and maybe some discussion with the relevant parties around some of those is a good idea. Coaching summit, I think, absolutely needs to look at. I think our coaching over the last 15 to 20 years has been really poor across the board, and that's where we're struggling. We're struggling with the skill sets of the players in a bunch of areas, and not only just in catching and passing, but also in some of the set-piece plays that we're doing. We don't have one line-out coach in the country at the moment that's actually a second rower who's actually jumped. So, you know, we're obviously lacking in some different areas, but I think just one all-encompassing. I think we know the issues. There's some big issues there, and they start at the top. And to have people, you know, coaches talking about what's happening over here in the board world maybe not be that productive, but having the relevant people involved in the relevant topics is probably the right way to go.
It's interesting to me to hear Tom talk about, you know, playing heads-up rugby and perceiving that as a New Zealand type of rugby, because when you look at, and you don't want to harp back too much obviously, but when you look at the great Australian teams, the 84 teams with the Ellas and whatnot, and then the, you know, the late 90s and early 2000s Australian teams, they seem to us to be teams that would have some framework but would play heads-up rugby. They didn't get too pre-programmed. And, you know, I remember thinking in New Zealand rugby when we were going through not a good patch, you know, 15, 20 years ago, my exact era, in fact, you know, we were a little bit too pre-programmed, and I think the All Blacks have probably shown the last 10 years that successful rugby can be built around a framework, but reacting within that. There's no point putting all your eggs in one basket and the picture changes in front of you on defence and not being able to adapt. And I'd be interested to know, Tom, if you feel coming into Super Rugby that maybe your previous rugby experiences had been a little bit too pre-programmed compared to what you guys are trying to achieve now.
Yeah, I guess they're coming through, the junior ranks. I just thought that, Australian rugby is very set piece sort of orientated. Obviously not as much as the South African team, but we're still, stick with our players, our backs when they do their units, they do their moves, and the forwards do line-outs and scrums, and we don't have as big an emphasis on unstructured sort of play. So it is coming into a professional environment, which I did for the first time last year. Was it was a bit of a shock to try and teach us how to do unstructured play, and especially for a guy like myself, where my set piece is sort of the cornerstone of my game, it was a bit of a sort of a shock. So I guess that's something that I think, especially from a grassroots and a juniors perspective, Australia could be a bit better at in terms of more recently, developing that unstructured sort of play.
Does Gibbo play quite a bit of touch rugby? Because I know, those sort of skills that you see most often from the New Zealand teams, just that reacting, the quick passes off. A lot of that can come from touch rugby, those sort of games. You're playing a fair bit of those? Yeah,
I mean, Daryl's really into that sort of stuff, before training. Every session we'll do that sort of stuff, but I guess, you can't blame it, or it's not Daryl's fault if we don't do it out in the field. It's up to the players to, transfer that from training into the game. So, we've got to take that ownership and, try and transfer those training skills into the game.
Having played under Daryl, he's a coach that has a high level of skills in all sorts of training. So I don't think it's necessarily the catch pass is one of it. I reckon there's a big issue, we said it last week, support play, and just educating players on what they do after they pass the footy. And at the moment we're passing and just trying to help a guy get through contact, as opposed to letting that guy have a go in contact on his own and seeing if he can keep the ball alive. So we're almost shutting that attacker down a lot. And I know Daryl, he's big on his skills, and that's why it would be frustrating for the Tars at the moment.
No doubt, and for their fans watching. So maybe a half here, half there, maybe 80 minutes coming up this weekend. Well, not this weekend because you've got the bye, but next time we see you. Thanks very much for popping in.